In the early evening of March 19th, 1821, 17 days before his death, the emperor informed me very kindly of the choice he deigned to make of me as one of the executors of his will, along with some of his last wishes, and the arrangements he was making on my behalf. Then he said to me, "You shall marry and have children. They shall inquire about me, pursue you with questions, and you will be able to tell them you saw me die of misery on the rock of St. Helena, struck down but still standing." It is for you, my dear Malvina, and for those who loved the emperor that I have collected my memoirs. They contain the truth. They shall show Napoleon in St. Helena, just as great in adversity as on his throne, when he commanded over Europe, still equal to himself, struck down, but still standing. My memoirs reproduce my observations, my feelings, and the emotions that events spurred within me. Much has been written about the emperor on the island of Elba during the 100 Days and his captivity in St. Helena. All that has been printed is not always accurate. I am indebted to the emperor's memory, not to his dignity, certainly little compromised by maneuvers due to cupidity or partisan spirit. I am indebted for his kindness towards me and for the honor he has done me in naming me one of the executors of his will, so that I may restore the truth in the facts I am aware of. I shall do so with moderation, often even without referring to the alterations it has suffered, and through the simple telling of events. Although I have shared the enthusiasm that Napoleon inspired, I have not ceased to be truthful. During the 10 years I spent in his personal service, 6 were spent in a more special way during his captivity in St. Helena and on his stay in Elba. And I was able to admire such genius, talent, and glory on the throne, such courage, resignation, and grandeur in adversity, and always and everywhere such sensitivity and kindness for his people. I have but one fear, and shall have but one regret, that my pen might fail my heart. Part 1. Marchand's beginnings in the service of the emperor. From the trip to Holland to the establishment on the island of Elba, May 1814. Chapter 1. Entry into the emperor's service, trips to Dresden and Holland, campaign of Russia and Malay conspiracy, 1813 campaign in Saxony. In 1811, 12 young men were chosen among the families in the emperor's personal service to serve as ushers in his apartments. My mother, attached to the household of the King of Rome as first nurse to the prince, requested this favor for me from the Grand Chamberlain, the Count de Montesquieu, and it was granted. The emperor was then happy. At the peak of his glory, he had just had a son whose birth fulfilled all his ambitions. He saw before him the establishment of his lineage while he was still young. He had the vision and the hope of placing his son's throne out of reach of the dangers which threatened his power daily. The court was brilliant with festivities, balls, shows, small trips, and hunts rapidly following each other. The former nobility sought the honor of attending the court, of being admitted to the emperor's household, and serving the state in administration or the army. It was welcomed and obtained what was within the emperor's power to grant it, honors and positions. The new nobility did not see this without some jealousy, but it knew the emperor in the army, and there only merit was rewarded. It was to be under the battle flags that duty and honor, valor and glory led to a fusion of the old and the new nobility. The fusion of all parties, the emperor's primary goal in his plans of glory and prosperity for France. A genius as active as he was powerful. The emperor, for his time, had arrived and was even ahead of it. He promptly replaced anarchy with order by undoing the disasters of the revolution. King Louis, against the emperor's wishes, but in the interest of his people, whose suffering he knew, had just abdicated as King of Holland. The emperor decided to make the trip. Sometime after that, the court went to Compiègne, and their majesties left that residence for the kingdom the emperor had just annexed to France. Since the emperor was visiting the country, he arranged to meet the empress in Antwerp. The princess went, along with her retinue, to the Laeken castle, leaving the king of Rome in the care of Countess de Montesquieu. When she arrived in Laeken, she made several excursions in the vicinity, visiting manufacturing facilities and the Brussels Theater and purchasing a considerable amount of lace, which the emperor had suggested, in order to bring new business to those factories that were encountering bad times. Everywhere she went, she was greatly welcome. In the meantime, the emperor was visiting the entire northern coast, from Boulogne to Flessingue, where he had ordered some construction work. While on board the Charlemagne, he was detained there for 3 days without being able to go ashore because of violent winds. Some persons in his retinue who had got on board small ships met with great danger. The empress left Laeken to join the emperor in Antwerp. Their majesties remained in that city a few days, visiting public establishments and attending festivities given in their honor, and left Antwerp after witnessing in a shipyard the launching of a vessel into the Escaut. The emperor left town, letting the empress proceed to Gorkum, where he rejoined her. The various armed forces under the command of Marshal Oudinot were under arms in spite of heavy rain. The emperor reviewed them. When he returned, although wet, he granted audience to the town officials. The governor of the kingdom, Arch-Treasurer Lebrun, Duke of Plaisance, had come to town to greet their majesties. From Gorkum, the emperor and empress proceeded to Amsterdam via Werkum. They made a solemn entry into Amsterdam. The empress rode in a multi-paned carriage with an honor guard around her. The emperor was on horseback, surrounded by a brilliant general staff, and was deliriously cheered by the entire population, which had turned out to see him. The notables of the city, tradesmen, and others were surprised to see the emperor speaking to everyone in his own terms, appearing to be perfectly aware of their interests, concerned with their needs, and not at all foreign to any of the details he knew would please them. During the entire time the emperor and empress remained in Amsterdam, there were nothing but parties and excursions in the absence of the emperor, who had gone to Texel. The empress went to visit the village of Broek, whose streets form a kind of mosaic upon which carriages could not ride. An exception was made for Her Majesty, who was taken to the mayor's house. She was shown the door, which was only opened for christenings, weddings, or deaths. The emperor also went to Sardam to visit the cabin where Peter the Great lived while he was studying shipbuilding. During this trip, the emperor and empress were one day on a yacht. He went up to the helmsman, questioned him, and asked if the boat belonged to him. Not at all, he replied. If it were mine, I would consider myself very fortunate.